Good morning, students. Today we are going to do basic sentence structures. You have different types of sentences. You have already learned the sentences, isn't it? Do you remember the different types of sentences that you have learned? They are the affirmative or the positive. Then you have also learned the negative sentences. You have also learned how to frame questions or the interrogative sentences or framing questions. Then you have one more form which we haven't done, that is the imperative sentences, where you give orders, where you have commands, requests, advice, etc. Okay, so the different types of sentences. Basically, what do you have in a sentence? You have words, isn't it? You have different words, but the words are arranged in such a way that it conveys complete sense or meaning to you. So that is what is called as a sentence. Yes, what is a sentence? It is a group of words which conveys complete sense. So now, you have to look at the structure of a sentence. After knowing what a sentence is, so usually what does a sentence comprise of? What will it have? It has a verb. There will be no sentence without a verb, isn't it? Do you remember what is a verb? Verb indicates action, you know, running, eating, fighting, dancing, playing. All these are main verbs which indicate action. Then you also have the helping verbs, especially the be form. Again, in that be form, you have the present forms like am, is, are, and the past forms like was and were. Okay, to explain being, like if someone is intelligent, what will you say? He is intelligent. That is being. Okay, the baby is cute. The roses are red. So being verbs, we make use of the being verbs there. So sentence comprises of verbs. A verb is compulsory in a sentence. In the same way, to do that action, you need some person, some animal, or something that is called as, you know, the subject, the doer. So either a noun or a pronoun, right? So that is how your sentence begins. Usually the doer will be at the beginning of the sentence. So basically your sentence can be divided into the subject and the predicate, and you also have, okay, so you have the subject and the predicate. So you might have noticed, what is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words that conveys complete meaning. Okay. And now if you look at the different parts of the sentence, a sentence has a subject and a predicate, and also a few sentences will have an object. Okay. So what forms a subject? Either a person or a thing will become the subject. Okay. And what are we doing? We are discussing that subject, we are describing that subject, or we are dealing with the subject. So you also call the subject as the doer. The subject is the doer. He does something. The predicate comprises of a verb and it states something about the subject. They're related. The subject and the verb in a sentence will be related. The verb will state something about whom, about the subject, what the subject is doing, how the subject is. So here we'll be using the verbs. They indicate either action or being. Like you have various action verbs. Remember, write, eat, run, speak, fight, call, take, read, listen, make, break, dance, sing, talk, all these are the action verbs. You're doing something there, action. Then you have the being verbs, the forms of be, like am, is, are, was, and were. You remember the being verbs from the verb be. Now we move on to the next one. So you will be learning these basic sentence structures. We'll be dealing with 5 sentence structures. The first one is subject plus verb, and the abbreviated form for subject is S and verb is V. So you might be asked to write one sentence or 2 sentences based on this pattern, S plus V. Then the next one is subject plus verb plus object. You'll be learning this. Okay. So again, the abbreviated form, S plus V plus O. The next one, subject plus verb plus indirect object plus direct object. So S plus V plus IO plus DO, right? This is the form that you'll be using. The next one, subject plus verb plus complement. So the short form of that, S plus V plus C. The last one that you will be doing is subject plus verb plus object and plus object complement. That is S plus V plus O plus OC. These are the various patterns or the structures that you will be learning. All right. So before we go to that, you need to know about the subject and the predicate. So in the basic sentence structures, told you subject is very important. Subject is the doing word or the being word. So usually it answers the questions who or what. Like the subject of the sentence, a sentence is a person or thing, and that thing or the person is doing the action or being described. You're describing that, like the baby is cute, the house is beautiful. So you're describing being. Okay. So every sentence must have a verb and every verb must have a subject. So already I told you in the very beginning that a sentence comprises of a verb and the verb must have a subject. So you have the subject and the verb which form the parts of the sentence, and these are compulsory. The subject, because sometimes you might have a noun, a proper noun, that is a name. So that is why it is called as the naming part of the sentence, because you're using a name there. So it can be a noun, like using your name Rama, Sita, whatever. Okay. So that is the naming part, dog. Or you will also use the pronoun, either the different pronouns. So the subject is usually either a noun or a pronoun. If you don't use a noun, you will be using a pronoun there, right? Have you understood about the subject? So this is what the subject deals with. This is a part of the sentence where you describe about the action of a person or a thing, and this is also called as a naming part of the sentence. And usually you have the noun or the pronoun as the subject. Is it clear? Shall we move on now? So subject, look at this sentence. Shreya is playing. So which verb is there? Which is the verb? You have already done the tenses, so you can easily identify the verb. You have playing. Okay. So who is playing? Shreya is playing. So she's doing something now. So which is the subject here? Shreya is the subject. Shreya is the name of a person. So naming word, or you also call the naming word as a noun. So here, which is the subject? The noun is the subject, right? In the next one, Aditya is intelligent. You're describing Aditya. So being, you're using the be forms. Aditya is intelligent, right? So about whom are we describing? Who is intelligent? Aditya is intelligent. So it answers the question who. So that forms the subject. and Aditya is a name. So it is a naming word, or you also call it as a noun. So this sentence begins with the noun, and this part, that is Aditya, forms the subject of your sentence. Now the next one, Rama got the first prize. So again, if you ask the question, who got the first prize? What is the answer to that? You will get the answer Rama. So Rama is the answer. So Rama is the subject. All right. So which is the verb there? Got is the verb. What did she get? The first prize. That forms the object. We'll go to that later. So first, we will concentrate on the subject, right? Have you understood it so far? Is this clear? So how will you try to find out the subject? By asking a question. Who? Usually who, sometimes also what, right? The next one, David killed Goliath. So here you have two names. The first name is David, and which is the verb there? Killed. Killed is your verb. So killed is preceded by David. So again, a name, a naming word, a noun, and that forms your subject, the doer. He did something. So David is the subject. The next one, poems were written by Keats. What were written by Keats? The answer here is poems. So, which is your subject? Poems is your subject, right? Is it clear? So again, things, right? So naming word or noun, that forms the subject. The children are playing in the garden. Okay. Who are playing? Children are playing. So which is the subject? Children. The is the attributive. Before children, you use the. So children is your subject. Okay. Again, noun, the naming word. What are they doing? They are playing. Which is the verb? They are playing. Then in the garden. In the garden is the adjunct or a prepositional phrase there. You remember, you have prepositions stay, giving you the connection, the link between two objects or two nouns. All right. So where are the children? They are in the garden. That is the prepositional phrase. So here the children becomes your subject. Actually children, the is the attributive. So you can write the children is the subject here. Then the next one, you also have pronouns which are used as a subject. The pronouns I, you, we, he, she, it, and they. These are the pronouns. And you might have noticed these pronouns frequently come before the verb or at the beginning of the sentence. You can see these examples now. I teach English. So instead of my name, what am I using there? I'm using the pronoun I. So nominative pronoun. This pronoun is used as the subject of the sentence. So the subject pronouns, you can call them. So what do I do? Who teaches English? I teach English. This becomes the subject. The next one, you teach maths. Okay. So which is the subject here? You. Then we teach physics. Who teaches physics? We teach physics. All right. So we is the subject here. Then the next one, he teaches computers. Right. So who teaches computers? He teaches computers. So he is the subject. So, instead of the name there, we are using the pronoun he. Then she teaches economics. Again, instead of the name, we are using she. Right. Then it guards the house. Instead of saying the dog, we are using the word it. It guards the house. So that is the subject. They teach students. Who teach students? They. So they becomes the subject there. It precedes the verb they. So this is how you will be using the pronouns, the subject pronouns, and they come at the beginning of the sentence. They form the subject. Like, do you remember? The subject can be a noun or a pronoun, a naming word, or a pronoun. So here you have the basic sentence structures where you have to identify the subjects, identify the subject in the given sentences. Edison invented the bulb. So how will you try to identify the subject? By asking the question who. Use who. So here, how will you frame the question? Who invented the bulb? What is your answer? Edison invented the bulb. So which part? Now, what is the subject here? Edison becomes your subject, right? The next one. The workers will start their work. So again, ask the question, who will start their work? What is the reply, the answer to this? The workers. So actually, workers is your subject, the is the attributive. So the workers, that is the subject, will start their work. Now the next one, the teacher accompanied the students. Which is the verb here? Accompanied. It becomes easy if you're able to identify the verb. And then already you know the verbs. You have learned, you have done the tenses. You should be thorough by now with the verbs. So identify the verb and you can ask who did this. Then the answer will be there and that answer will become your subject. So who accompanied the students here? The teacher. The teacher accompanied the student. So which is the subject here? The teacher. Okay, so that becomes your subject. In the same way, next one, his new house is ready. So here, yes, can you say who is ready here? No. What will you ask? What is the question? What is ready? So what is ready? His is ready or new house is ready? House is ready. So which is the subject? House is the subject here. New again, it is describing more about the house. And whose house? His house. So house is ready. House becomes your subject, right? The doctors and the patients are happy. Who are happy? Here you have a compound subject. The doctors as well as the patients. So both this, the doctors and the patients becomes your subject, right? My father and his best friend are starting a new business. So, if you ask a question, who is starting a new business? My father and his friend. So, again, compound subject you have two there. Okay. Dogs are faithful animals. Who are faithful? So, dogs are faithful animals. Whales are mammals. Okay, who are mammals? Okay, whales are mammals. They are engineers. The question, who are engineers? They. So they becomes your subject, right? Is it clear? Then here, good books are worthy companions. What are worthy companions? Books. You're describing more about the books. You're adding something more meaning to it by using good there. But your actual subject will be books. Books are worthy companion. So this way, you should be able to identify the subject. So if you know the verb well, then you can frame a question and you can easily identify the subject. So be thorough with your verbs. Keep using those verbs. Keep speaking. Use those verbs in sentences of your own. Speak with your friends so that you also become thorough and you will overcome all those inhibitions that you're scared of using English. All that you will overcome by speaking and you will become thorough in your subject. You will also know the verbs, right? Now let's move on to the next one. So how to identify? There are a few tips to identify the subject. Look at this. The children from the house at the end of the street are very mischievous. So now what do you think? Which is the subject? Can we use the phrase the house? The house is preceded by a preposition from. So even you can't use the street. At the end of the street is there. That is also preceded by a prepositional phrase. So now which can become your subject? Children again. So that way you have to read a sentence and see if it begins with a prepositional phrase that cannot be your subject. The subject will not begin with a preposition. It will be a naming word. It will be either a noun or a pronoun. Okay, so here, which is the subject? The children. Again, the is the attributive. Children is your actual subject, right? Next, each of the students, the determiner also you call it, the all those things. Each of the students was given a medal. Okay, at a glance, if you see immediately, you will think the students is the subject. But again, the students, what happens? It is preceded by a preposition. What is the preposition that is being used there? Of. So, you know, you cannot use that as your subject of the students. It doesn't give you complete sense. It becomes only, a prepositional phrase. So, which will be your subject here? Each. Each of the students was given a medal, right? So, here each is the subject. So, try to read the sentence that is given to you. Identify the noun or the pronoun there without the use of any prepositional phrase. That will be your subject. Okay, is it clear so far? Shall we proceed? Right, let's move on next. So, the next part of the sentence is the predicate. After the subject, you have the predicate, and the main part of the predicate is the verb. Do you remember what is a verb? A verb is a word, it describes an action, isn't it? It is a word used to describe an action or a state or occurrence, right? So, this forms the main part of the predicate, the verb. So, now let's look at the verbs. Now read these sentences. You are given two groups of sentences and you have to identify the difference. In group A, you have sentences like Anita ate an apple, he painted a picture, she bought a house, she watches movies, he reads books, the dog caught a ball, farmers grow vegetables, the teachers distributed sweets, they sell computers, he has won medals. Okay, so you're given 10 sentences in group A. Then group B, you have 10 more sentences like the baby was crying, he sneezed loudly, the train arrived early. Yeah, these should be there. Arrived early. A new planet appeared in the sky. The child smiled cutely. The bag appeared from nowhere. He died from cancer. He sits under the trees. He went to his hometown. She continued to teach, though the bell rang. Okay, so now you know the verb and you also know the subject. So identify the different parts there. First, identify the verb in each sentence. All right, then identify the verb. And then what do you have after the verb? Identify that. So suppose if you take up the first sentence, like Anita ate an apple, which is your subject? The naming word, Anita, the noun. Ate is your verb. And what do you have after the verb? Apple. Apple is again a noun. So here the verb is followed. If it comes after, you call it as followed. If it comes before, precede. Okay. So here Anita ate an apple. All right. So what is it? The verb is followed by an object. The next one also, he painted a picture. What did he paint? A picture. So again, the verb there is followed by an object picture. Right. The next one, she bought a house. Which is your subject? She. She is the subject and bought is the verb. Again, the verb is followed by a noun. Which noun? House. So this becomes the object. So here again, the verb is followed by an object. The next one, she watches movies. You know the subject she and the verb is watches. And what do you have after the verb? You have movies. Noun. Okay. So once again, this verb is followed by a noun. So you call that noun as the object. He reads books. So again, which is the subject? He. And then the verb reads. What does he read? Books. Okay, so books is the noun, and because it is after the verb, that is called as the object. The next one, the dog caught a ball, or the ball. The dog caught the ball. You threw the ball, the dog caught it. Okay, so dog is the subject here, caught is your verb, and a ball is the object. So again, what's the position of the ball? It is after the verb. So what do you call a noun which is after the verb? That's called as the object, right? So the next one, farmers grow vegetables. So which is your subject? Farmers. Okay. Then the verb is grow. And once again, grow is followed by vegetables. Vegetables, that's a noun, things, isn't it? So because it is followed, it comes after, the noun comes after the verb, that's called as an object. The next one, the teachers distributed sweets. All right. So what did the teachers distribute? The teachers distributed sweets. Again, teachers is the subject. Distributed becomes your verb. And again, after the verb, you have sweets, things, noun. And because it is after the verb, you call it as the object, right? They sell computers. They is your subject. Sell is the verb. And what do they sell? Computers. Now, where is it placed? It is placed after the verb. So what do you call it? You call it as the object. The next one, he has won medals. He is your subject. Has won is the verb. And then once again, after the verb, what do you have? You have medals. And what is medals? Noun. And where is it positioned? It is positioned after the verb. So what do you call it? You call it as the object, right? So what do you see now? You see all the verbs in group A, they are followed by objects. Okay, each verb is followed by an object. Now let's move to B. The baby was crying. Which is the subject here? The baby. Verb was crying. Do you have anything after the verb? There's nothing. Okay, no object, right? Then the next one, he sneezed loudly. Okay, what is sneezing? Do you know when you have cold, cough, and of course now everyone has been told to be careful not to sneeze, isn't it? Right. So he sneezed loudly, which is a subject, he. And the verb is sneezed. But do you have any noun after that? No. How? Loudly. Adverb. Okay. So this verb is followed by an adverb. It is not followed by an object. There is no noun or a pronoun. So there is no object there. The train arrived early. Now, which is the subject here? The train, and the verb is arrived. Again, early is an adverb. Late, early. Okay, so there is no object there. Next, a new planet appeared in the sky. So, which is your subject? Planet. Okay, how's the planet? A new planet. Verb appeared. Where? In the sky. So it begins with a preposition. This is called as a prepositional phrase, right? So there is no object there, no direct noun. So you cannot have an object. So this is the prepositional phrase. The verb is followed by a prepositional phrase. The next one, the child smiled cutely. Subject child, verb is smiled, and adverb cutely. How? Cutely. Then the next one, the bag appeared from nowhere. You know, the subject is bag and appeared is your verb. Again, from, prepositional phrase, from nowhere. Do you remember your prepositions? You know, quickly recall the prepositions. For time, you use by, at, then in, on, from, to, of, with, during, since, among, between. beside, besides, all these are the preposition. So if it begins with that, you call it as a prepositional phrase. Then the next one, he died from cancer. So subject is he and your verb is died. Again, that is a prepositional phrase. So it begins with from. So from cancer, prepositional phrase, it is not an object, there is no noun there. He sits under the trees. So again, subject he, verb is sits, under the trees, prepositional phrase, right? Then the next one, he went to his hometown. Okay, subject is he, the verb is went, again to his hometown, that is a prepositional phrase. She continued to teach though the bell rang. Again, she is the subject, continued is a verb, and to teach is your prepositional phrase. There is no object. So now you have seen the two groups. So what can we do? There's a difference. So in the group A, all those verbs are followed by an object. So these type of verbs are called as transitive verbs. Transitive, transitive verbs. The verbs which are followed by an object. That is, after the verb you have object. That verb is called as a transitive verb. Now what did you observe in group B? Group B, the verbs were not followed by an object. There was no object. But what did you see? They were followed either by a prepositional phrase or an adverb. So you had an adverb or a prepositional phrase. And these verbs are called as intransitive verbs. You call these verbs which are not followed by noun, pronoun, or in other words, an object. These verbs are called as the intransitive verbs, right? They are not followed by noun or pronoun, which will act as an object. So, no object. So, that is why they are called as the intransitive verbs. Is it clear so far? Are you thorough with this? So, what have you learned? You have learned transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. What is the difference between the two? Transitive, the verb is followed by an object. Intransitive, verb not followed by an object, but you can have adverb, prepositional phrases and all that, which you do not count as an object. Only if you have a noun and a pronoun, you will count it. You will take it as an object, right? Now, you have the objects, that is, the object of a sentence is a person or thing that receives action of the verb. Now, after the verb, you have either person or thing that comes there, that is called as the objects. Again, objects, you have two types of objects. You have the direct object and the indirect object. So, direct object directly affected by the action of the main verb. You know, what did you do when you have those questions, when you ask directly what was done, all that, then that answer you get, that becomes a direct object. Indirect object, usually person or thing that benefits in some way from the action of the main verb. you know like, I gave him a prize. So what did you give? You gave a prize. That becomes your direct object. To whom did you give it? To him. That becomes your indirect object. So, you have the direct and the indirect object. And usually the pronouns that are used as objects, they're receivers because they receive something. You have the pronouns me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. You cannot use I, we, he, she, it as an object. Okay, you will be using these pronouns. What are the pronouns? Me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. Now look at these sentences. She gave a book to me. Usually at the end of the sentence, you will get it, right? the object comes after the verb at the end of the subject. Like if there are two objects, the pronoun will be at the objective pronoun will be at the end of the sentence. She gave a gift to him. To him. You will not say to he. It becomes him. She gave a toy to her, not she. Okay. Then she gave a biscuit to it. This, there's no difference. It only. She gave the papers to them. You will not say they. To them. Okay. Object place. You will be using these pronouns. She gave the money to you. Right. You also, there's no change. You and it will be the same. But the rest of, then yes, us, they gave it to us, we becomes us. Okay, so this is how you will be using these pronouns. All right, so this is what you learn in the sentence structures. Is it clear? Okay, so what have we done today? You have learned the subject, how to identify the subject. Then, you have the verb, how to identify the verb. You have learned the two different types of verbs, that is the transitive verb and the intransitive verb. What does it depend on? What is a transitive verb? A transitive verb is a verb followed by an object. And what is an intransitive verb? Intransitive verb is a verb which is not followed by an object. All right, so you have learned this, and then always, the subject will be either a noun or a pronoun. And pronoun also, you cannot use me, you, him in the as a subject. These can be used only as the object. But for the subject, you will use the pronouns I, we, he, she, it, they. Okay, those pronouns will be used as the subject. So this is how you will be using, your subjects. You will identify the subject and you will identify the verbs. And okay, so you have learned today two types of different sentence patterns. What is the first one? Subject plus verb. So which verb will you use there? You will use the intransitive verb. So what will you do for your assignment? You will write down 10 different sentences. Okay, in SV pattern, you can use any verb, any tense, okay, but write down 10 different sentences. So usually, there's a list of the verbs that can be used in the intransitive, like appear, arrive, okay, sit, lie. Usually you say, the dog was lying down. So down again, that is a preposition. So you cannot have an object that becomes intransitive verb. So SV. So write down 10 sentences in that pattern, SV pattern, and 10 sentences in the SVO pattern. Okay. So you will be doing this, complete it, then we'll proceed with the others. So now quickly we'll go through once again what you have learned today. So first you have learned what a sentence is. It's a group of words that conveys complete meaning. Then what does a sentence consist of? A sentence has a subject and a predicate. And the subject is the doer, the noun or the pronoun, and it begins, it comes at the beginning of the sentence. Then the verbs, you have learned the verbs. So recall all those verbs and the different, you have action verbs, being verbs and all that, use all those verbs. Then today we have done two patterns, SV and SVO. SV, you will be using which verb? Intransitive verb. And subject verb object, SVO, you will use transitive verb, right? So then how will you try to identify the subject? By asking a question like who or what. The answer will be your subject. So don't get confused. And wherever you have a prepositional phrase, that cannot be your subject. The subject should be free of a prepositional phrase, right? So write down 10 sentences in SV pattern, 10 more sentences in SVO pattern. Okay, so we'll continue with the next part of it tomorrow. Right? Thank you.